All right, welcome everyone. It's super exciting to be back for another episode on Birth the Middle Way. And today you're here with myself, Sammy Love, and the beautiful Veda Revival. And I've been so looking forward to this conversation with you, sister, and I'm really excited to dive in. I feel like it's such a nuanced topic. And so, I wanted to just start by giving you space to introduce yourself, who you are, what your passions are when it comes to supporting families, what your kind of work is within the space of birth, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, my name's Veda, and it's so great to be here with you and those listening. Really, first and foremost is I have passions as far as my life goes. It began when I became pregnant, really. I think that's kind of how most mothers kind of come to be, where things are revealed when they get pregnant, because suddenly life it's not just about you. It's about another being that's relying on you, and that's when a lot of things just opened up for me. So a lot of it was for me on this concept when I was connecting to my babies as I was pregnant with them was like I need to be born free. And so what does it mean to be free is really what started my unraveling, I guess, because I started thinking like what does it mean to be free? Am I free if I'm paying 30% in my taxes just to stay out of jail? Am I free if I have to ask permission for everything? Blah, blah, blah. Obviously led me to free birth. It led me to the birth certificate and what that means. So truly, long story short, what I help mothers and fathers do and their families is have babies out of the system and raise them without a birth certificate successfully and still function in society, because obviously that's a really important part of being a mother or father is that you don't inhibit your little ones by making choices. You're actually being the one that fosters them and their choices as they grow, and you give them all those opportunities. So yeah, that's my path.
Beautiful. So, how did you first become aware of the possibility of not registering your child? Because I feel like many families are not even aware that that's a possibility within their field.
Yeah, well, it's one thing I think most of us skip questioning.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting too, because like with my first baby, I spent my whole pregnancy kind of unraveling birth because there's so much to unpack in itself where you start realizing like, oh my gosh, everything's a lie, which I mean, you can think of that basically fits in almost every scenario, I feel like, in the government, the pharma, birth, all of it, right? So it actually was this first, I went through the birth process with my baby, unraveled all the truth about birth, and then it came to the birth certificate. And I just felt knots in my stomach.
Uh-huh.
I didn't feel good, but I was like, dang it, I didn't study enough. I didn't study enough about this part because I spent my whole time studying something else. So I went off my body and my feeling didn't feel right, but I didn't really have words or an explanation as to why, really. I'd heard a few things about the birth certificate, but really not enough to like really know. So, they give you this like 10-day window on how you have to get stuff done. So I just didn't have time. I mean, as a postpartum mom, like seriously, you're not even on earth yet to like,
Seriously.
let alone be studying all this that takes more than 10 days.
Right.
So, yeah, my first baby got a birth certificate and I knew, as I was connecting with second baby that was going to come through, they made it so clear I need to be born without a birth certificate. So that was kind of when the first it came through to my awareness
Right.
on, okay, if this is how you need to come through, I need you to guide me on what that means. And so that's really when it first came into my awareness and where I started studying, I guess.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So the personal motivation for you then, it was just your spirit babies. Like you felt like really just guided from them to pursue this.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely never, I don't think would have come through any other way.
Right.
I feel like it feels very clear to me that these babies that are coming through are needing to come through in a very specific way. A lot of them need to be born a specific way, in a gentle way where we're not passing on trauma, which is just another form of slavery, right? So that was just another element to my questioning on what does it mean to be free. And yeah, the babies really are. I'm finding the more I ask, because I don't know the answers come through when you ask these babies, because
Right.
holy crap, all these babies coming through are ready to usher in this like whole new era of freedom.
Right.
And I feel like the moms are listening. That's what's
Right.
really exciting.
Totally. Totally. That's what is really exciting. Totally. I love that semantics. Yeah, it's interesting. For me, it's like it wasn't my awareness as well. And I didn't like the idea of a birth certificate, but my babies were born in Peru, and it's like
Mhm.
my family lives in
Mhm.
North America. So it's like for sure we need access to a passport like within the year,
Yeah.
but like to pursue this with curiosity of like what does it look like for humanity to slowly be working towards like true sovereignty really is, more than freedom. It's like it's true sovereignty, like which is the truest form of freedom in my eyes. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited to dive deeper. So where do we go from here? What are the steps? What does it look like? What's the process? I have so many questions, honestly.
Yeah. No, really, I would say at first involves being aware of the contracts we're signing.
Right.
Because I think that started becoming aware of is everything is contract. And I didn't even think of things that way because I was so used to in my lifetime of I don't know, going to AT&T and T and just scrolling to the bottom and just
Oh,
signing
for
the
sure.
contract,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever the
for
heck
sure.
I was signing, and not realizing everything is contract, especially legal contracts, what kind of contracts and obligations come with those contracts. So that's really, oh my gosh, that was a whole new rabbit hole for me when I started realizing the system is designed so perfectly.
Right.
And however it was designed
Yeah.
was geniuses put
Right.
this
I
in
love
place.
that saying, right? Like the saying that it's like the system actually isn't broken. The system is functioning exactly as it was designed, right? Like
Yes.
we want to see it as broken because we see this toxicity and this chaos and like, just all of these problems. And so we orient towards saying, the system is broken, but it's like, no, it was so intentionally and perfectly designed and it is working perfectly according to that design, right? And so
And we're the symptoms of it, right?
exactly. Exactly. Okay, so I guess my first question in terms of what you were sharing there is like, what are the risks of signing yourself over? What is the risk of this contract that is a birth certificate?
Yeah, so when you sign this birth certificate contract, essentially when we don't realize, well, and I'll just say intentionally, as this intentional system is set up, is that we all go through, an average of 13 years in school. They don't teach us anything about law, legal, contract, nothing, and that's on purpose, right? So we don't realize that there is different legal terms and they're all distinct. So there is a
Uh-huh.
difference between recording and registering. So they've taught us all that when you get a birth certificate, it's just a record of birth, right? It's just proof that it happened, this event happened. And if that's true, then we would just be recording the birth.
Uh-huh.
But they want you to register the birth. And when you register a birth, what that does is that actually creates a title, a legal title that hands ownership over to the government.
Right.
So we're registering ownership, just like when we do with our cars, just like we do with our marriages, all these different things we're registering, handing that ownership over. So we truly are making our babies property and making them wards of the state. So that's why really you start looking at all the word magic and all the legal terms too, even like parent. You literally are a pair of people that rent that child.
Oh
And that
God.
ultimately they come in and can do what they want because they want you handling their property in a specific way.
Mm.
They insure all their property through the social insurance because they are property. So it's just you start realizing the trickery and everything they've done for us to hand our babies right over.
Right.
And I think it was such an aha moment for me when I started realizing, okay, having a free birth, I'm like advocating and fighting to have this baby out of the system and then we're just turning over and like literally handing our babies right into
Right.
the hands. You know what I mean? And I also feel like it's one thing to do it with eyes wide open and knowing, understanding the contracts, or not even understanding, I want to say overstanding, comprehending what we're doing and how to play the game. Because most of us are doing this not overstanding the whole game.
Right.
We're doing it unconsciously. So it's a very different game when it becomes conscious
Mhm.
and you actually do have the choice to not do it or to do it and operate a different way.
Right.
So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I guess, the question that I'm sure everyone is asking, and the question that I've been asking is what are the hurdles? Like, what are the implications for families? What do they get to navigate when
Hmm.
they choose this? And,
Yeah.
specifically asking things around taxes, around medical, around passports, travel, the freedom to move and exist as every other being does.
Yeah. Okay, so I would say the first hurdle to overcome is there's a lot of learning because in order to stand confident in where you are, you have to know your
You
rights.
have to be educated, right?
Yeah. So of
Totally.
course, like I said, they don't teach you anything about law, any of that, even the Constitution, really. Like, do
Right,
we even know what the Constitution is? No. Do we even know that each state has actually multiple constitutions?
right.
No. So you really have to spend your time learning so that when you are questioned, you have foundation to stand on, that confidence instead of like, oh, I heard.
Yeah,
You want to know your rights because again, you don't have rights if you don't know them. And that's
exactly.
obviously the way they've preyed on people is making sure they don't know so that they can do whatever the heck they want. So education first.
Wow, beautiful.
And this is not an overnight thing, right?
Of
You
course.
spend time learning a lot of this stuff that they've censored. That's the way they've suppressed suppressed the information. The next thing would be is mainly just having conversations with these agents of the Matrix that will tell you you can't do certain things and you can. It's just like I feel like a flashback into the COVID era when you'd walk into a grocery store and they're like, "Well, you have to wear a mask." And they'd say legally you have to wear a mask, but was it lawful?
Right.
And there's a difference between the two, you know what I mean? So you'd have to like if you really wanted to fight for yourself and how you do that, I don't ever like recommend even doing it combative either. It's
Of course.
doing it lovingly and honestly teaching most of these people how to do their job and what is lawful.
Right.
So you really are, you're honestly teaching a lot of people. And when you can do it in a loving way, that's when
Right.
people change.
Right. It brings up for me, it's like, okay, man, how even educated are the agents of the Matrix, right? Like it brings me to a story of my dad's friend who there was a city cop. I live in like southeast Saskatchewan, middle of nowhere, very rural, and a lot of hunters. And so my friend's dad was out in his truck and he had a rifle. He's a hunter, legally
Hmm.
registered, all this stuff. He was doing nothing against the law, but a city cop came down, saw this gun in his car, thought that it was illegal and pinned him
Hmm.
up against the car, handcuffing him. And it's like, then you go to the station, and the other cops are like, no, that's not against the law. He's within his rights, and there's no consequences. This cop just threw this man up against a car, thinking he knew the law. Yeah, I mean, if you're a police officer, for crying out loud, you should know the law,
Oh,
right? And
I
so it's like, how many people that are even reinforcing these things are actually fully aware of the spectrum of information themselves? That's a very curious piece for me.
that it really is, and that's what's so interesting in how the system again was designed is because a lot of these people enforcing the laws really actually don't know the laws.
Right.
They're just taught policy. So, and they're enforcing the policy.
Mhm.
So that's where along the hurdles, I would say, of this path is you really do get used to saying, let me talk to your superior, because they're going to tell you right away something that's not true. So you have to get used to saying, okay, first connecting with love and
Right.
then kindly asking for their superior and usually eventually you get someone that's actually knowledgeable enough because how
Right.
they censor information is by keeping the gatekeepers not me
Exactly.
either.
Right, exactly. Oh, wow, it's so well constructed. It is so well constructed,
Yes.
right?
And it will shake. I will say this path isn't for the faint of heart either because those initiations, I call them, can shake you because you're like, well, I asked if I could do this and they said no. And then you walk away because they said no and you realize
Right.
like, no, you have to be willing to advocate for yourself and your baby. And while you do that, you're showing them how to advocate for themselves as they grow. But I will say the biggest thing I found that's the easiest thing in the whole world is getting your baby a passport
It
without
is
the birth
easy.
certificate. Because once you can show proof of nationality, which I will say too, again, when we're going into this legal jargon, the difference between nationality and citizenship, you hand them a passport that says you can lawfully live on this land. No one's questioning your citizenship status, I will say, or your ability to do certain things. So for me, that was the key, honestly, if your kid wanted to go to school, if they wanted to get a driver's license, if they want to get a job, you start looking at all the different forms and what actually is required.
Uh-huh.
And a passport is the true key. So once I started discovering this, I was like, okay, okay, note made. How do you get a passport without the birth certificate? Because as far as I knew, you need a birth certificate to get the passport.
Right.
So that's what, threw me down the whole rabbit hole on, all right, so what did they do before birth certificates were ever even a thing? Birth certificates weren't like standard practice until like the 1930s.
Okay.
Okay. 1933 to be exact, which is actually a very particular year because it's the same year that the United States went bankrupt.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of a whole other other story.
Sidebar.
But realizing that a birth certificate, what was done before the birth certificate was a standard practice, still holds true today, and it actually holds more weight
Oh,
than a
interesting.
birth certificate does. And it's things like family Bible recording proof of events,
Uh-huh.
family Bibles, religious certificates, affidavits, different things like that that actually hold more weight. So you're essentially using those kinds of things to get the passport. And of course, when you get the passport too, I just kind of want to make a note that a passport application is a legal contract as well.
Right.
But you have to be very aware of how you're filling out these legal contracts
Right.
because they're always trying to trick you into jurisdiction,
Uh-huh.
trying to trick you into jurisdiction through language. So like your records need to have very specific language so it's not tricking you into jurisdiction. Also, how you're filling out forms, you're removing yourself from jurisdiction. Because
Okay.
anytime they can trap you through jurisdiction, again, through language or through addresses, certain different things like that, because their addresses are all tied to their corporation.
Right.
So it kind of goes into a whole like being very aware, doing this all very intentionally, so you can still access certain things without being within jurisdiction.
Right.
So, yeah, anyway, I guess I'll say the easiest thing I found, honestly, is
Can you
getting.
give some examples of that for just to pause, like what that would actually look like within the actual process of filling out the passport, what you're looking for? Like I'm going in my mind to my process of filling out like Canadian citizenship and to get my Canadian passport. And you're just to clarify for the audience, you're specializing in this in the US and you're trying to branch out to other countries, correct?
Yes, yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and
And
that's kind of
so
the trickery, I think,
right.
in it too, is they're wanting you to go citizenship route rather than nationality route.
Right. And so I'm thinking about even just the passport application. Like I'm trying to think now, like, did I need to for the citizenship? I know for sure I had to send in my birth certificates, but also for I think also for the passport I had to as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
So
just yeah, maybe you can explain that and then like specific things within the document that like yeah, just maybe expand on those points a little bit more for listeners.
yeah, totally. So, and I will say before I even like get into this is in the things that I offer are I walk people through the actual application and filling it out exactly how to do that. So you are staying out of jurisdiction and you're not getting tricked because again, they're constantly in every form
Right.
trying to trick you. Okay.
Right.
So really anytime on any document you've ever said, yes, I'm a US citizen or a Canadian citizen or whatever,
Right. You're
the
consenting to that.
jurisdiction of the corporation.
Right.
So that's the first way.
Mhm.
The other way is through, again, location addresses, and I'm going to just put this in United States and then you guys in North America can translate to where you live. But really, essentially, we have District of Columbia, okay, is actually according to their codes, the location of United States.
Okay.
Then you have State of Idaho is a sub corporation. Okay. City of whatever is a sub corporation. So when you're writing your addresses out and you're saying their jurisdiction, you're saying you're a resident of. Being a resident of United States Corporation is under their jurisdiction.
Okay.
So is that kind of making sense a
Yeah,
little bit?
so like that would be one of the trickeries is like you basically saying this is my address even. Okay.
Yes, this is where I live. Now you're saying I live within District of Columbia.
But is that a citizen or like is that not a nationality? Like why would say okay, yeah, wow.
Okay.
It's so
I
nuanced.
see that's the way they've tricked us
Ah,
is because people don't realize that there's the difference between like the land and soil United States and the corporation United States. Same goes with Canada, which is truly honestly actually located also in District of Columbia when you're looking at addresses too.
Right.
But what they've done is they've attached their certain postal codes to District of Columbia. So you're very, like I said, when your language, you're using specific language or certain location with making sure that you're part of either the land and soil versus the corporation.
Uh-huh.
So, and you'll start
Address is
noticing
part
which,
of a corporation.
yes, yes,
Okay.
that's how
And
they
so
tie it to,
what
or
is part of the
residency.
land? How would you explain your where you live in accordance to being part of the land versus part of the corporation?
So in the United States specifically, again, like I was saying before, there's actually multiple constitutions even within a state.
Uh-huh.
So people don't realize there's the difference between the United States corporation and the 50 states of the Union.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
and each state has its own republic. So you are putting it towards the republic is the land and soil.
Okay. Okay.
If that makes sense. Yes.
And so you would then fill that form out saying, I live in this republic.
Yes, and being very aware on how you're stating the language
Right. Oh my God.
too. So yes, and it gets really difficult too, like I
Right.
said,
Of
and that's
course.
why I created like templates
Right.
exactly for this, so
Right.
you're not getting tricked into because they're so smart with how they're like, ah, got you with the language again, because they have certain words. You start looking through their dictionary words. Using the word parent, even. They're like, okay, now you're under this jurisdiction because you used our word, and our word is defined this way. So that's why they're like residents. Okay, you said you're a resident. Now you're a resident within jurisdiction. So it's very, like I
Whoa.
said, there's a book called Word Magic that I highly recommend people use or read. And it's
Uh-huh.
so like eye-opening to the way that they've used words and their
The
legal
spells.
terms to trick all these people.
Right. Right.
So we all think what a person means. We think a person means like you and I, but according to legal definitions, a person means an entity, a business, a trust.
Uh-huh.
So we're all identifying as citizens when a citizen is actually a business, according to definition. So when we're identifying a certain way, now we've reduced our rights. So I want you to say like really understanding that like the United States Constitution is for we the people. It's for men and women. So the moment we don't identify as a man or a woman and we're identifying as a US citizen, now we've reduced our rights and now we abide by statutes and codes. So we're all just kind of reducing our rights into privileges, and privileges can be taken away. And that's why they can be taken away and they can be granted through licensure and certain things like that.
Okay, so what what is the benefit? Like, what does this award somebody to claim this level of freedom, this level of sovereignty? What are the benefits of
Mm.
that? Like, specifically, like just to plant a few seeds where my mind is going to is like the government having the ability to take your children away through CPS or to be able to put you in prison if you've done something quote unquote wrong. Like, can you still are you still impacted by the laws of the society or the country that is America? And to what extent, if
Yeah.
so?
Yes, I love that question. There's multiple types of law, and people don't even understand that there's more than one. They've kind of only taught us one and very limited one. That law actually stands for land, air, and water, and they're the different jurisdictions. So what they've all tricked us into essentially is the law of the water, which is maritime law, which is commerce. Like back in the day when we were doing, trading through ships and all across the seas, all that kind of stuff, right? So really the benefit of it is that I guess what was your question earlier? Is like what oh my gosh, I was going somewhere and then I just totally lost
What does
it.
it award a person
Um
like to be able to be
oh,
sovereign in this way? What are the benefits?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so where I'm going with that is that there is the law of the land, which is common law. And really, essentially, when it comes to common law, is that you cannot harm another person. And that's really what you're bound to.
Right. Okay.
Where with the law of maritime law, essentially, you're bound to all these different statutes and codes.
Okay.
So as long as you aren't harming another person, there isn't a live victim, essentially, you can essentially do what you want, which
But
is
isn't
really
that
what.
nuanced? Like, isn't harm in and of itself nuanced? Like, is it just in the space of like murdering or taking somebody else's life or like,
No,
stealing
it's
from
like
somebody?
spiritually, emotionally, physically, like
Right.
any form of harm, even like
Okay.
trespass is a form of harm. So there's all, you go, gosh, what's it called? The 10 maxims of the law, which is another way that you look that is kind of outlines the different, what it means to not harm another being, right? So if a mother or father is abusing their child, you can have that child taken because you are harming another, if
Right,
that
but
makes
there's so much trickery there, right? And then I'm like questioning the freedom and sovereignty because one thing we're seeing, especially, more so for minority couples around the United States, is that people are wanting to, are like CPS is being called when people aren't vaccinating, for example, right? Where it's
sense.
like the system might see that as harmful, but that parent is doing the most loving thing that they can see based on the information and experiences that they've had, and it's the parent is seeing that as, or I mean, to even use that word, so what do we call parents if we're not calling them
Yes.
mom and dad? Mom and
The
dads
mother,
exist.
fathers,
Mother, father.
guardians. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
I like, because to me, being a mother, father is like a very sacred thing.
right, for
And
sure, I agree completely.
that's,
Yeah,
yes.
I agree completely.
So, but
So,
you also have to realize too, it's contracted too. If baby is considered their property, they actually get to choose what harm is in that sense.
uh-huh,
When they're
okay.
not within jurisdiction, that's a whole other thing. You challenge their jurisdiction. Everything comes around jurisdiction.
Uh-huh, okay.
And to explain that a little bit is like that's the reason why like a cop in Idaho can't pull someone over in California because it's outside jurisdiction.
Right.
So does that kind of make
Yeah,
sense?
totally, that makes sense.
That why the reason most like CPS, for example, they will assume jurisdiction unless you challenge otherwise.
Uh-huh.
So it is our job to know enough to challenge them and their jurisdiction before they can actually act upon something. So they can, if they assume legal title and they don't like the way you're parenting, they can do whatever the hell they want.
Right. Right.
Does that kind of make
No, that
sense?
makes sense. And so,
They
like, how would you
don't
navigate as the
have
parent who, let's say, doesn't have the birth certificate, is sovereign, knows like law, knows this, all this information about jurisdiction, and has CPS at their door wanting to take their kids because they haven't vaccinated?
ask where they've contracted with CPS because they have to first contract, and everything is a contract. Everything's an offer.
Uh-huh.
So CPS even showing up at your door and you inviting them in, you've accepted their contract.
Whoa. And so and like at the higher ups, they would know that, like, okay, well, the moment that you let them into your house, like you said yes to all of our
Yeah,
jurisdiction.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. They must have a warrant to get into your house.
Right.
And I can promise you they can't get a warrant by not vaccinating their child.
Right.
Oh, and even like saying things like understand. When a cop pulls you over and they say, "Do you understand why I pulled you over?" And you say, "Yes." You said,
Uh-huh.
"I stand under your authority." You just
Whoa.
made a verbal contract.
Uh-huh.
So people, again, we're not realizing not just the written contracts, but the verbal contracts and the way that we're accepting contracts. So the way that you rebut it too is, first of all, you do not have to let them into your house.
Right.
They do, I promise you, they don't have a warrant to come into your house. That would be the only thing that would allow them into your home. And that would take a lot of work, and not vaccinating your kid isn't going to be a reason a judge is going to allow them a warrant into your home.
Right.
Um, First, that's again challenging their jurisdiction. Where's your jurisdiction to come inside my home? And they're going to try and weasel their way into anything. And a lot of mothers and fathers are loving mothers and fathers, and they will let them into their home because they're like, look, my house is clean. I have food for my kid. They're trying to like prove that they
They're
are a
a
good,
good parent, right?
yeah, even though maybe my religious beliefs or my just sane beliefs say I shouldn't inject my child with poison, they're trying to prove that they're a good parent, but their job is to come in and they will find something.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't matter how good of a parent you are, they will find something. So
If they
don't,
want to,
first of
or if
all,
they're
even let
committed to
them in your
that.
house. Don't accept do not contract with a private agency. Okay, they are a private business.
Uh-huh.
So you start realizing too, it's just like the manager at Walmart coming to your house telling you you need to go work a shift at Walmart when you don't work at Walmart. Did you sign an employee contract with Walmart?
Right.
No. Okay, prove to me I need to go work a shift. We need to start
Totally.
putting it back on them instead of just like we're so groomed to see authority and be afraid and not realizing that this is literally an independent business that's contracted that is trying to come into our home and tell us what to do. And we aren't standing up and saying, okay, first of all, I don't choose to contract. And second, prove jurisdiction that you're able to.
Right, right. And beyond
Because we
grooming
actually have to.
to be afraid of authority, we are groomed to perpetuate the system with which we live in, right? And it's
Hmm.
like there's so many things that I've done, and like things that you're saying are like some of it's familiar, and then I'm like, oh my God, like go girl, like you have got so much figured out. Like it's just like the education, the wisdom behind behind what you're saying, like it's such a nuanced thing. And like every time I brought topic of conversation up just to people in my field since we've planned this call, it's been like, wait, what? Like all of these questions, but how this, but how this? Because we're
Hmm.
so uneducated, And so to just like to see how deep actually the education needs to go, right? Like these little semantics and what that and the implications of them, all of these ways in which we are, verbally and not verbally, basically signing contracts every day, all day. It's like that's
Hmm.
in me, in this moment as you're sharing, I'm like, whoa, like it is so much deeper than anybody is aware of, right? Like,
Yeah. Yes, it
wow.
really is. It's so much bigger. And like I was saying, everything's a contract. Even like you inviting me to be on your podcast that was a contract between me and you.
Right.
And you start realizing every offer to contract, you get to decide how you accept that, how you take the offer. First, you
Right.
can either accept.
Mhm.
Second, you can just stay silent, which is acceptance.
Mhm.
That's another way you can accept, or
Okay.
you can counter offer. Or you can do what's called like essentially a conditional acceptance, where you say, okay, I hear you. If you can prove jurisdiction, if you can prove, you know what I mean? So then it puts the ball in their court to be able to prove certain things before they have jurisdiction.
Right.
So it really is learning how to see an offer and either accept, reject, counteroffer,
Okay.
whatever. So most of us are either just accepting without realizing what we're accepting or staying silent and accepting.
Right. So I'm
So,
curious, what's coming up for me right now, and this is kind of, like a little bit of a sidebar, but I'm curious, like what lived experiences you have or people in your field of like kind of the more nuanced, subtle things, like the police officer or potentially CPS or like real life experiences of
mm,
putting this education into your life.
yeah, okay. So I have one example that comes to mind very first is so this mother, she had her baby. And she didn't, so I will say too, before I preference in this story, that when you have a baby and you choose not to get a birth certificate, you do right away want to get your records in place
Okay.
so that if any controversy ever does arise, you have all that evidence that does stand up and in court if you needed to. You don't want to be within a controversy and then scrambling trying to get stuff figured out. So I'll say this mother, she didn't have her records in place and ended up within a controversy with a doctor that wanted to vaccinate her baby and she didn't want to, and it was kind of this battle back and forth, so it caused red flags. They ended up choosing to take the baby, and then they were trying to force her into getting a birth certificate for her baby. So she ended up going to court. She ended up creating her private records through my templates and things like that and getting her baby back, and didn't have to ever get the birth certificate by challenging jurisdiction that way.
Okay.
So
And
that's
so
one,
did they vaccinate her baby though?
as far as she knows, who
Okay.
knows behind the scenes, because you know what I mean? But that's the
Right.
first thing you want to have, that so they aren't taking your baby and you're left to figure out your proof.
Right,
That's
exactly.
another thing. It's like you want to have your proof before a controversy arises. Like to
Of
me, that's
course.
like, yeah, because yeah, you don't ever want to be in that situation. I can't imagine being in that situation where, first of all, you're left to even prove that you're the mother of that baby
Oh my,
because you don't have any of that proof. So that's why having all of that in your arsenal, first of all, so you can stand confident having these conversations,
right,
that you're like, listen, I have everything I need to back myself up lawfully.
right, right.
So, yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, I have had, and yeah, I have had mothers and fathers challenge jurisdiction with their private records, and it works. So,
That's super cool.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I guess next question is, have you seen it backfire? Like this whole process and families trying to go down this path and then it causing significant challenge. And also I guess specifically in the realm of like medical care and like maybe you can speak into
Uh,
that and
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So I will say, no, I haven't.
you haven't seen
First
backfire.
question.
Yeah,
Second, I will say I do help teach with my courses and things like that on how to have conversations
right.
with medical professionals, first of all. So I will say, first and foremost, avoiding war zones is the first thing, right? Where part of this lifestyle is taking radical responsibility of your life, and we're not,
Right.
I mean, the typical person going this route isn't bringing their baby into well visits in the first place.
Hmm.
Because really, well visits are just vaccine appointments, right? So
Right.
if you don't believe in vaccinating your baby, why are we bringing them to well visits?
Right.
That's where controversy is going to arise. So I would say
And so you would
choosing this
say
path,
that the well visits are war zones. Maybe,
I would say,
yeah,
because now
okay,
you're
yeah, yeah.
bringing them
Maybe
into
how are
their,
you defining war zones?
yeah, you're bringing them into their environment.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Okay, into
So
their
you're
environment.
choosing to bring your baby here and you're saying, I don't want vaccines, even though that's all that appointment is meant to do is give you
Right,
vaccines. And you're
totally.
like, now you're creating this resistance, right?
Right, right.
Um,
You're
so
also
just
creating a red flag, right? You're putting yourself in their awareness.
yes, yeah. Even like having babies in hospitals in a lot of places, it's like choosing to have your baby in a specific place in their territories.
Right.
Okay. We're choosing, that's a choice. Again, it's an offer that or an acceptance that we're choosing to go within their environment and we're accepting their rules and regulations when we enter. So I will just say that you're like very aware of how you're living your life.
Right.
Second, that does not mean though that like if something happens, your kid breaks their arm or something, that
Right.
you need to be afraid to take them to a doctor.
Right, exactly.
Well, they don't need to know that your baby does not have a birth certificate.
Uh-huh.
Okay. As far as they know, if they asked, your kid has all their records in place.
Right. And you just respond that way. My
Yeah.
child has all its records in place.
Yep, everything's in order, and you do. That is the
Right.
truth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, if they're asking, are they up to date on their vaccinations? You're saying, again, you're not, because the moment you say, I refuse,
Right.
notes made that you're
Uh-huh.
being
Uh-huh.
refused. You know what I mean? So you're not refusing anything ever.
Right.
You're saying, thank you, not today, but let me think on it, and I'll let you know when I change my mind.
If
If
I
I change
change my
my mind.
mind.
Yep. Right. So you're not like you're on their team, but
Right.
you're not like coming in refusing.
Right.
Like I was saying, are they up to date on all their vaccinations? You're like, they've had everything they need. They're up to date on everything they need, which
Right.
is nothing. You don't have to tell them that.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean? But you are telling the truth without causing resistance, if that makes sense. So you are very intentional and aware of the language that you're using. Um, you don't need a social security, you don't need a birth certificate to have get private health insurance without a birth certificate and without a social. The only thing that you do need a social for is going to be like government health insurance, which in that case you do have to contract. They don't just give you benefits for free. Everything comes at a cost. So you have to realize
So that's a
what
big
cost are
question
you
for
willing to
people.
pay for? So,
Right. So you're saying that
yeah.
you
Oh
need
yeah,
a
sure. Is
social,
like
yeah, you need a social in order to get
to
medical
get
insurance.
government insurance, to get government benefits. Yes.
Okay. So can you get
Yeah, but
private?
for like private insurance, which
Uh-huh.
is so private insurance is any insurance that isn't funded by the government, right? So if you're getting insurance through your work or you're just out searching for for insurance, that's all private.
Okay.
It's not government.
Right.
You can absolutely get private insurance without a birth certificate or a social. And I've had families do that all the time with their records. And a passport. A passport, again, like I said, makes it really easy. The moment you show them that, they're like, oh, okay,
Right.
cool. But yeah,
Is there
yeah.
anything else that families need a social insurance
For
number
me personally,
for?
the second thing they would need a social insurance for is getting a write-off on your taxes. Yes. Again, you have to contract to get a benefit.
Okay.
So you're always like trading on what benefit, nothing is free. We
Right.
need to like get that out of our minds that like, oh, it's a free benefit. It is absolutely not free. It comes at the cost. What cost are you willing to get your, I don't know, $2,400 refund or whatever it is that you get for writing a kid off?
Right.
When that's a whole other rabbit hole in itself on the voluntary system and how they trick us into benefits that we didn't owe in the first place. But yeah.
Okay. Okay. What am I missing?
Yeah.
What are other points that people ask you that you feel are just like maybe that I'm not seeing that you feel are important to share?
Yeah. No, those are really kind of the main ones. Obviously, are like, can my kid, go to school? Can they get a job? Can they get all those different things? And like I was saying, really the passport's kind of the golden ticket for all of those things. Because you have to realize too, like, why are they asking for a social? Generally, a social is going to be, you realize the Social Security insurance fund is just because we're all insured, right? It's a whole insurance trust fund in itself, and then start asking questions on why are we all insured this way? Um, so I like to tell mothers and fathers that you kind of really have to see the game. You see how they're operating. Essentially, they want you to have a birth certificate, and instead of a birth certificate registering into their records, you're doing your private records privately. There's a whole private realm, and then there's the public realm that we can kind of mirror things, I guess is what I'm saying. They want you to do citizenship, and you can get all the same benefits through nationality. And when I say nationality, I don't think I really explained that is the land and soil, right? Like we are all Americans rather than citizens. So you'll start realizing too when they ask you for nationality, American doesn't come up, even though that's nationality. They want you to click US citizen or Canadian, whatever. American is your
Oh,
nationality
right.
on the geographical location landmass, right? So, and then essentially when we get the birth certificate, they've created a trust or a business in our name. So they attach that business with the social security number. So everything we're buying, everything we're doing, we're essentially putting under that social. Say you buy a home or whatever, and it's attached to your social. The state actually owns that because the state owns that social insurance stuff. So that's why, say someone passes away, the courts get to decide what happens to those assets is because they actually own it in the first place. They're the owner of that trust. They're the owner of that business
Mm.
and that social. So what you're doing to kind of mirror that is you're creating a trust intentionally, a private trust with an EIN, which is an employer number rather than an employee number, which is your social, because
Mhm.
a social is just your employee number to the corporation.
Right.
And that's how you're being taxed through your employee because you're claiming to be an employee of the corporation. So you're kind of mirroring that. You're still functioning. You can still use your EIN to do business. And then you
Can
think
you
of this.
be an employee with an EIN or you need to like be a business owner?
So no, so essentially it's this trust fund. You can still work with other people
Uh-huh.
and still use your EIN.
Okay.
So you don't have to be, but all the numbers and the attachments to the numbers are showing you how you're taxed and how you're showing up.
Okay.
So every time we use a social, we're saying, "Hey, I'm a business of the United States and this is my employee number."
Okay.
So we just don't realize again how we're attaching ourselves and claiming jurisdiction by the numbers that we're using
Okay.
too and how we're showing up
Okay.
because we're either like I guess the thing that is the hardest to unlearn and relearn is to realize that we are like living beings and we're not a business. And when you become a business owner, I think it kind of starts to make a little bit more sense because there's this clear I am me and my business is it. And so when you're showing up on behalf of the agent of your business, there's clearly this distinction. So what they've done essentially is they've created a business with our name
Right.
so that we're like forgetting who we're showing up as.
Right.
So really what you're doing is you're just being aware of sometimes you do want to show up as the business agent of your business and other times you don't. Or so really the reason why you're essentially creating a specific entity that you're so aware of how you're showing up is in a private capacity versus a public capacity with their social. I
Okay.
might be getting like too into the weeds here, but
No,
um,
but there's going to be a spectrum of what people are able to like take in. They can also re-listen, go do some
yeah.
research, maybe do some of your templates or your workshops or whatever for those who are really
Yeah.
interested. So I think that information always has value, and just putting it out there and then people can always like unpack it backwards.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
question that's coming up to me though is like, to what extent is this process only awarded to the privileged, specifically like financially privileged? Because you're
Mm,
talking about all of these like private processes which cost
right.
money.
Yeah, so yes. Yes and no.
Okay. Okay.
Because really everything, I feel like the systems have been created in a way that we give out our authority in so many ways where they tell us you don't need to learn law, hire a lawyer. You
Right.
don't need to learn medicine, hire a doctor. You don't need to learn taxes, hire a CPA. So by us outsourcing all of that to someone else, we've lost all the need to know.
Right.
So I would say all of this is really that taking radical responsibility and deciding no one cares more about your family than you do. So you got to get learning and you got to get studying and you got to be doing what's best for you because all these people out there have been educated by the people that benefit from us.
Right.
So they've actually created a system where we are all reliant on all these outside sources and even benefits
Right.
from the government. But are they really benefiting us? Like this well care, is it well care or is it sick care?
Right.
I don't take my kids to doctors. I absolutely don't believe in that system. Doesn't it doesn't resonate with me. Okay? I don't subscribe to that. So I'm also not paying into that system because that's not where my like even insurance, like health insurance, I believe is an absolute scam. Not everyone's on that same wavelength as me, like I said, because
Right.
and they choose to get private insurance, which is fine.
Right.
I don't carry insurance for my family. I don't believe in it at
So
all.
what happens for you? I know the question that everyone listening is coming to is like, okay, but what happens when an extreme emergency happens where your child gets in a car accident or needs this like life-saving
Yeah.
surgery that like, that bill could be over $1 million,
Oh, absolutely.
multiple million
And so
dollars.
you have to also know like how the system works too, knowing that all of these hospitals are for-profit businesses,
Right.
okay?
Of course.
First of all, they're a business. I'll say that and then I'm going to set it aside for a second.
Yep.
So most people that are paying either into a private insurance fund, that's an insane amount of money that they're paying for the just in case kind of thing, right?
Right.
If you were to actually take that money, even $100 a month, and put it aside into your own little account, and when something happened, you tapped into that fund, you'd actually have more money than you would in an insurance fund because at the end of the year it restarts,
Hmm.
right? Plus, like, oh, and then there's the deductible, and there's always this like catch when you're using insurance, right? Like it's never like, oh, I've like for my dad, for example, like he just had to get heart surgery and he's been paying into his health insurance. He's a public school teacher and he's been paying for over, I don't know, 40 years at least. And then when it comes to this heart surgery and then the insurance is like, oh, we're not going to cover all this stuff. So it's like just to think this lifetime that he's funded into these companies and never used it.
Right.
And now that he needs it, they're like, oh yeah,
Can't fully support you.
well, yeah, so and you're still gonna have to pay. Yeah, yeah. There's this deductible, plus you're still gonna have to pay X, Y, and Z. Like it's not, it's all a catch, okay? So realizing this is like an illusion of safety is what insurance is. And anyone that's had to actually utilize their insurance really discovers that. So I'll say that first. Second, I want to like make note on the insurance in itself, what insurance is. Just like the social insurance, right? It's like a fund that you can tap into if you need these government benefits. When I'm flipping over here saying you can actually get a private insurance policy, a life insurance policy, social insurance is a life insurance policy.
Okay.
Okay. So people don't realize, people think that a life insurance policy is for the death benefit,
Hmm.
but you don't realize that there is a whole living benefit that you can actually utilize and tap into when you're alive
Hmm.
and use that for emergency funding.
Okay.
So instead of relying on this social insurance fund, you're creating your own life insurance fund and tapping into that when you need to. So your $100 a month, $50 a month, $20 a month, whatever you choose to put towards your emergency fund, that's where and then gosh, how do I explain? Because that's a whole kind of thing in
Right.
itself. But essentially, you're leveraging the death benefit and pulling out loans from yourself, from your own bank. Like that's actually how you do private banking
Right.
is through a life insurance policy, mirroring the social policy, but on your own level.
Right.
So that's kind of one way that people, and I personally do. That's my emergency fund. If something happens, I have a life insurance policy that I'm tapping into.
Okay.
But the last thing I want to say as far as that goes is that, again, the business is a for-profit business. And if you approach them and you say, hey, I can afford $20 a month for the rest of my life, they will accept a payment plan because they're happy to get what they can get. Otherwise, that's going to end up going to collections and they're not going to get anything.
Anything. Right.
So when you approach them and negotiate like a business and say, this is what I can afford, otherwise more will cause me harm, they
Right.
have to negotiate with you.
Right.
So we're just so, again, so used to like just bending it to whatever they say. And if we can't pay all of it, we're like, well, we're screwed.
Right.
And that's not true. We just have to know how the system
Right.
really works and how a business actually works.
Right.
So,
Right. It were just my uncle just said that breakfast this morning we believe what we're told. And I was like,
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
yeah, and he doesn't even know like fully like where that's coming from. Just he's talking about the news and we are just having this conversation. But it's like it brings me into this realm of like we're told the policies of each organization, right? And this is the consequence and this is what is affecting you. These are the implications of your choices. If you behave in this way, you're gonna get this punishment, basically, and it's like, but they're like I don't have to go down that path. There's other options,
Hmm.
right? But we're not told that there's other
Hmm.
options, so we don't believe that there's other options, and
Yes.
we just see a tunnel.
Our reality truly is what we believe. And of course, we've been implanted with specific beliefs so that we create that belief in our true reality. I love the question that you had earlier, which is essentially like, is this for just like privileged people that can afford it? And I would say, no, it doesn't cost, it cost me $0 to have my free birth. Okay, $0. What it did cost me was my time to educate myself and unlearn and relearn.
Uh-huh.
I'm now my own lawyer. I don't hire lawyers.
Yeah.
I don't hire CPAs. I don't hire these other people. I've actually insourced all of my authority and I've chosen to take on that radical responsibility, and that cost me $0.
Yes, goosebumps.
So it's definitely for the privilege, but of course they've set it up in a way that we are so reliant on these
Right.
benefits that we're willing to contract and give up
Yeah.
freedoms for them.
Okay, but information in and of itself is a privilege. And so how can people access these things? Education is a privilege. And so to what extent is this information in a library where somebody could just go and get a library card and educate themselves versus,
Yeah.
not even being able to afford the, let's say, 400, $500+ worth of books that you'd buy on Amazon to educate?
Oh, it's free. Like go on, you can go to the library and open a law book.
Uh-huh.
Okay. They're
Okay.
all there. Black's Law Dictionary. Start reading definitions. Start going online and start reading definitions. Start reading different codes.
Right.
That's all free.
Right.
Of course, they don't teach you that in school. Start reading the Constitution. Start reading these different things so that you can realize who they apply to and who they don't apply to.
Right. Right.
That's where I started. I started because a lot of this stuff too, you start hearing, and it to me, you can hear it, it's hearsay until you start reading the actual factual codes yourself.
Right.
That's when you're like, okay, now I see where it says the United States is a federal corporation. It says it literally plain as day.
Uh-huh. It's all
Okay,
right in front of
Fortress
us, right?
Location, District of Columbia. It says it clear as day, but you got to be going and researching and studying their own law codes that they don't show you. So really it is free if you have internet or you have a library, because even a lot of these like law books, you can just they're PDFs for free online.
Okay. Okay. So maybe, yeah, maybe that's something that we could add on to the bottom of this podcast is if you like, because we have on Substack an area where we can share information and resources. And, obviously we'll definitely plug your work. And I'm sure there's going to be so many people that are listening that have access to, really work with you one-on-one. But I would love if it feels aligned for you to also offer some free resources for people that
Yeah.
feel inspired and want to like just go grassroots because maybe they don't have the resources to be able to pay for your support. And
Totally. Yeah, I'm actually in the process of creating like a whole kind of like a free intro kind of down the rabbit hole resource too to help people. So that's going to help a lot too. And just to help people, like a lot of people are like, well, where do you begin researching? And that's kind of
right,
where I'm going to that's when I've been called to spend a lot of I'm kind of creating an outline currently right now for that like freebie for people to just,
right,
first of all, there are people that feel called to what I'm offering as far as like, let me help you with the templates. Let me help you like distinctly get the passport. That's really kind of been my, really where I help families. But like, you have to have that confidence, first of all, to even get there.
Right.
So I really want to like create this like free education to create confidence before even going to another level, you
Right.
know? So
Right.
anyway, I
That's
am
so
in the
beautiful.
works of that.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. Like seriously, it's so beautiful. So
Thank you.
I have two more questions coming up. The first
Yeah.
one is like, can you speak into where you're at in terms of your education, your awareness of other countries, which countries maybe you are starting to bridge out into?
Hmm.
Just like for me specifically coming from a personal place, it's like I'm Canadian, my partner is American, we live in Peru, our babies were born in Peru. And so
Hmm.
because they were not born on American or Canadian soil, they can't actually be, they'd have to only become citizens. They can't be nationals, no?
Well, okay. So say I don't know quite the answer
Right.
to that yet because I haven't like distinctly studied that. And
Thank you
if you
for your transparency.
are there, I would start going there. You know, I
Right.
started where I live, and that's where really
Of
where
course.
my main education stems from.
Of course.
Um, but I'd like to open people's minds and to say that's what we're told.
Right. Of course.
So maybe be open to exploring other ways, but you have to be open to the idea before it can become a belief, right?
Right.
Um, Second, just kind of knowing, like, okay, so right now I am working with a family specifically in Canada with Canadian, trying to get the passport that way.
Right.
It is a little bit, what we're finding is a little more difficult because there isn't necessarily like a republic to fall back on like there is the United States.
Right.
Same with Australia, which that's kind of, we're still navigating. I'm still figuring that out. We're experimenting because really a lot of this is new territory. We're trailblazing, right? Even in the United States, for me, getting the passport without the birth certificate, that was like a big, and that's why,
Right.
because it was so difficult for me, because you really can't find any information out there, was when I was like, hey, I want to create this platform for other people feeling called to this.
Right.
Um, of course, like for me, I'm connecting to like another spirit baby of mine that is telling me they need to be born somewhere else, not in the United States.
Right.
And so I'm like, hey, well, I need to figure this out too for them. So that's kind of really sparked a fire in me to start figuring out these other processes. I'm also working with a family currently right now that they had their baby in Jamaica and trying to get the passport there. So it really right now it's all pretty experimental and
Okay.
until I can cross the finish line. And of course, I wanted to share all that with everyone because I know there's especially a lot of Canadians and Australians specifically, I'll say, that are really anxiously waiting for that.
Right.
I can't wait for that to cross the finish line. But
Right.
I want to kind of make a note too for those mothers and fathers that have birth certificates or feel like that's their only option.
Right.
I feel like because a lot of, I mean, just kind of like you were explaining to me earlier, is that you had to travel. And so
We
it's like,
live
what do I
there.
have to
Yeah.
do right
Yeah, we
now? I
had to travel.
don't have
Exactly.
time.
Right. 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 Right.
I don't have time to figure this all out. Even if you end up getting a birth certificate, that doesn't change that your baby is sovereign, that you are sovereign, and that you are a living being.
Mhm.
And really, what you're doing is you're teaching your little one how to play the game. I think that's really the biggest thing is knowing that they can have a business with their name on it. They just need to learn how to be an agent of that business and not trick themselves into who they really are.
Okay.
We
Who
are
they're
all
not. Yeah.
sovereign. We are all living men and women,
Yeah.
okay? And we get to show up that way and we can actually challenge jurisdiction that way anytime. It does make it makes the system easier to challenge when they have a business with our name too.
Okay.
So I would say that that's what makes it easier when you really don't even have a business within your name that they can tie you to, but you can still always challenge who you are and who you're not.
Right.
So really just learning, being aware and teaching your little ones who they are,
Right.
how to use it, because you can still use that birth certificate as a tool to your benefit too, and to be an agent of that business. So I don't want, because I don't want to do this out of fear.
Right. Of course.
People like, I don't want people to not get a birth certificate because they're fearful, and I don't want people to get a birth certificate because they're fearful of the what ifs they don't.
Right.
Like, make sure that you're just like rooting all your decisions out of love. And
Hmm.
no matter what you're doing it lovingly, and you're going to just take the responsibility to learn how to navigate that way, no matter what way you choose.
Right.
And do what's best for your family.
Right.
Because ultimately, because some people getting the birth certificate is going to be the best thing for their family and their situation. And don't feel shame in that. Know that you're doing it out of love instead of fear.
Right.
So
Sure.
I'll just say that.
For sure. Okay. So I would love for you to speak into a few examples of what teaching your child to be an agent of their business might look like and entail. And then I would love for you to speak into, oh God, did I just lose it? No, oh yeah. So can you backtrack? So if you have done a birth certificate, is there a way to relinquish that and abolish that contract?
So technically there are ways by like rescinding it and all that stuff. I haven't, like I said, my firstborn has a birth certificate,
Uh-huh.
okay? And I feel
Yeah.
like I love the opportunity that my little ones have both given me to be able to navigate both ways
Right.
and not be afraid of the birth certificate and know that he is not the birth certificate. He is just the agent of it, right?
Uh-huh.
So it really is this opportunity to operate in a public capacity if he chooses to and do it intentionally or operate privately. Because I still recommend, no matter what, if you've got a public business trust in your name, to still create a private trust in your name that you're actually moving your assets into rather than just your public name that the state owns. So sometimes it really is a matter of knowing how you're showing up in certain scenarios. Is that kind of landing for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Or,
yeah. It lands for me for sure. I mean, I'm just thought spiraling so hard with everything that you're saying.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, no, it is landing for sure. And so yeah, I mean, what I hear you really sharing is root in love and learn the system and still, that one really makes sense between, okay, you do have this birth certificate, which makes you an agent of this business that is you, basically, and
Hmm.
to like allocate your life more in a sovereign way in spite of the
Yeah.
birth certificate. So still moving towards things like the life insurance versus medical insurance, even if you have a birth certificate, this type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and just to not be afraid either way because you know who you are.
Right. Right.
No, there's no reason to like, because even if, again, you have the birth certificate and CPS chooses, someone decides to call CPS to come to your door, your baby or your child, no matter the age they are, is still a living being, and you can still challenge jurisdiction that way
Uh-huh.
by
Okay.
having private records
Right.
and claiming, but most of that is putting on the record, creating these records saying otherwise. Because if all you have out there is a birth certificate, then the only evidence you have out there is that your baby's a dead entity corporation. So when you're kind of creating this evidence otherwise, which is actually kind of silly when you really think about it, because your living body should be the evidence,
Right. Totally.
but you're also creating these like living records essentially
Mhm.
that show otherwise. Things, yeah. So,
And so
yeah.
those are the things that you've been doing specifically for your child with the birth certificate.
Yep.
And so how old is this child and are you starting conversation around some of this content with them already?
So him, no, I mean he's pretty young.
Yeah.
He's 4, so not
Okay.
quite.
Yeah.
But really, my awareness, like I truly want to teach him to be a creator, an entrepreneur. That's really like the main path that I intend on teaching him. I have created a private trust for him and an EIN for him so that he gets to choose and operate as he chooses to. But of course, I would have to have the knowledge to be able to teach him which one to use in certain scenarios that would be ultimately the benefit for him, right?
Right.
So, but really having the option is the most important part, is that he gets to choose to operate privately when and where he wants to, and he can choose to operate publicly when and where he wants to. So that's not yet because he's so young, but
Right.
I really am excited for that opportunity that, when he turns 16 or whatever, and he gets to decide, do I want to contract with a driver's license? Knowing what that contract is and what those obligations require me to do, is that something I want to do? At least I can give him full informed consent and he can choose otherwise, knowing that you can actually travel privately with a passport card, knowing which one he wants to. So,
Right.
yeah, I feel like ultimately for me, it's all about teaching him his options and then I get to back him up on whatever he chooses because that's just my job to love him no matter what he chooses. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Oh, so beautiful. Okay, one question that's been burning on my mind since kind of the beginning of the podcast, you kind of like sprinkled it in there and it's less relevant, in terms of the conversation around birth and specifically birth certificates, but you kind of just dropped in marriage certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Curious, like what people are signing over in terms of their relationship when they are signing a marriage document. And
Yeah.
yeah, if you could just speak slightly into that.
Totally. So really, it's kind of interesting that they've taught us that a marriage license doesn't make our marriage like lawful unless we've really, okay. So what a marriage license is we think it's just a marriage between us and our spouse. But really what a marriage license is now you're creating a contract between you, your spouse, and the state. The three of you are now within a contract. So this is why if you decide to get divorced, you have to go to court and the court ultimately decides how you're splitting up your assets is because you've invited them voluntarily as a party into your marriage contract.
Oh, yeah.
So, and they also get to decide how you split your assets, meaning your children too. They're the ultimate decider. So people don't realize that you can actually have private marriages within their family Bibles and different records like that, that still makes lawful marriages, but you're actually just choosing to have a private contract between you and your spouse without the state being involved. But
Uh-huh.
of course, that takes a level of maturity and awareness, which I also recommend mothers and fathers have a trust together, like a little, like an actual trust entity together, which to me goes back to like true marriage, which is sacred trust,
Right.
where you guys are creating a contract together without the state involved, stating essentially everything we're doing within this trust is for the benefit of the beneficiaries, period, which is going to be your
Children.
children.
Okay.
So that really comes down to like you guys are creating a private contract without the state. But yeah, we've all been tricked into inviting the state as a party within our contracts in so many different ways that we didn't realize we didn't need to.
Right.
So,
But does that protect some people, like specifically women, in certain dynamics where like the marriage is coming apart and like specifically around like custody, right? Like
mm-hmm.
so how like because women are obviously like in most cases less physically strong, right, than men. And if there isn't like, the state there to protect certain mothers who might be in this volatile dynamic, how are they left to navigate?
Yeah, totally. Which first of all, it's like really sad. I feel like that we've been put in this box, making us think that the state needs to protect us.
Right, totally.
And it's sad, but like your private contracts are legal and lawful contracts that the state still recognizes. So if you and your partner were to create this contract, the state still has to honor that contract.
Okay.
So if something were to happen within your marriage and your partner went totally against this contract, taking that in, it would be enforced by a judge because they did sign a
Oh,
contract. So
okay.
that's why honestly it's like so important. I feel like
Right,
they yeah, we all should be having contracts privately between each other before we even get married so that we can stick to this contract. But
right.
of course, they don't want you to do that because they want the judge to be the decider and they also want the women to believe that they need the state to make that decision to
Or and to
protect them.
protect them, exactly. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, yeah.
Right.
You have to also understand that like family court in itself is big business. They make
Of
so
course.
much
Of
freaking
course.
money.
Oh my God.
It's like disgusting how
Oh no,
family
I know. I one of my friends between the two of them, 2.5, 225, $250,000 for their divorce.
Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah, it's so intense.
Yeah,
It's so
but
intense.
yeah, not realizing if we would have made a contract prior
Right.
that would have been enforceable with no matter what because they agreed. They accepted the offer.
Right.
So, anyway.
Right. So you've spoken twice, maybe three times into specifically the Bible as a contract. Can you share a little bit more what you're saying there? Like, you
Yeah.
mean actually like writing it in like the cover of a Bible or like, okay,
Well, literally, yes.
yeah,
So
okay,
you could literally get a Bible out of the freaking hotel drawer and
right.
create a family Bible. But what's really interesting is, according to the law, the Bible is law. Your religious, all it is it's seen as a book of records. So when you're adding your records to this book of records that's seen in the legal world as law, it does apply. So it is actually what was done, like I said, by our ancestors, passed down as records before birth certificates were a thing.
They would just write
So,
something on the cover of their Bible,
yep,
sign it.
literally your family tree, your family history, and then passing that down.
Wow.
Literally. It's like it sounds so complex, but it really is pretty friggin'
Can
simple.
you add pages to the Bible? Can you do like
Sure.
glue in some pages so in case you need multiple contracts?
Yeah, make affidavits and do,
Uh-huh.
yes, you can literally do anything.
Oh, wow.
Again, you're just adding your truth to that book of records, and the state says, okay, it's seen, we legally view this as a book of records, and your records are within that.
Right.
Yeah, and
It's super
honestly, that's
inspiring, you know? Like, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
no, I was gonna say that's actually why I became a minister so that I could provide
I
certain
had
like
this
religious
question. Thank you.
records to because religious records are held with more weight than birth certificates and things like that.
Right.
Because a living being is vouching for you that this thing happened. So,
Okay,
um,
explain more of this. I had this question. I'm glad you brought up the ministry thing because like so what in order to create like the level of power, I guess, that you obtain in that process of becoming a minister, what path do you have to walk? Because like, for example, where it takes me is I did like one of those like to become a minister and marry my sister and brother-in-law like 7 years ago under an oak tree in
mhm.
the forest, and it was like the Universal Church of Love or something online that I like just signed
Literally,
up. And
it's
is that
that
enough?
simple. It's that simple. But the only thing is a lot of times now the next thing is they're going to trick you into saying you have to legally register it when you didn't have to go do that. You could have privately done that. But yeah, that's literally all it takes. And anyone out there can go create their own ministry.
So I don't
We
think I legally registered it. I just did it online and I didn't send it anywhere. I
Yeah,
just,
so they what they did is they registered. They
uh-huh,
could have
okay.
just kept it beautiful like that. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Unless they did. Maybe I'm assuming that they registered
No,
their
I'm
marriage.
sure that they
It
registered it.
literally could have been as
So
simple
then does
as
that register me or it just registers them? So like
just
me as a minister, so I'm technically a minister because I did that.
hmm
Oh,
Yeah.
because my sister was like, no, there's no way that the thing that you did online was enough. Like you need to go through the process of like going through the church. And I was like, I'm gonna
No, 'cause you can literally create your own church lawfully. Like that's something
have you done that?
you're doing. Yeah, yeah. So
You've
I
done that.
created my own ministry. Everyone can go do
And your
that.
own church?
Yeah, so your own like faith-based organization, your own ministry. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Where you are the minister of your own affairs. Like we should all be operating as the ministers of our own affairs.
Okay. I want to work one-on-one with you for that.
Yeah.
We run an ayahuasca retreat center in Peru. That's what we do. And so, we've always been curious about the process of starting a church in North America and that being the way that can protect us to do our work here safely. We have kids, so we want to stay in
Yeah.
the realm of not being put in prison.
You you start realizing all the rules and regulations create this because it really was founded on religious freedom. When you stand on your religious freedom, you can do, I mean, they've created a way for you to do that. You just have to know
Wow.
enough to execute. They've
Oh,
censored that information.
right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
We believe what we're told.
Yep.
Wow.
Lesson of the day.
Lesson of the
Yeah.
day.
And it's so
Seriously.
exciting, I feel like, when you can start expanding that belief and you start crawling out of the box that they've put you in and you start realizing it's
Right.
so much bigger and it's actually so much more liberating.
Right.
There's so many options because
Right.
there's a million different ways you can start moving and operating in life rather than this one way that they told you. They've taught you this one path.
Exactly.
We've all just been walking it. But then when you start realizing there's all these other ways you can operate lawfully as well, that
Right.
it's like, holy cow. And then it just, I don't know, the vision.
Right, right. And
It's
that's one thing that's dropping
exciting.
in for me as you've been talking, because I feel like my pursuit in my life of like starting to see the workings of the government and all like this culture, this entity that we're living under, right? And like feeling so suffocated by it was to just like, I don't consent. And so like I'm not living here, I'm removing myself, like part of that is like my path to, living in South America where I perceive more, simplicity, I perceive more
Mhm.
freedom,
Freedom of thought.
yeah, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom to do the work that I do in the world, like yeah, it's so interesting. Even, like I studied traditional psychology and psychotherapy and decided I didn't want to become a licensed practitioner because it was so constricting. And so, to work in that field now for 10 plus years, but not to like be able to even use the word that's owned by the government, which is psychotherapist or,
Right?
and
Yes.
like even with midwifery, I walk this path and it's like, like the word midwife was created in the 1800s. It was co-opted by our government, and now it's become this legal term that like is dangerous to like use. Like I have to use these other words like birthkeeper or whatever because I'm unlicensed. But like I'm studying under these elders who are so beautiful and like very much so perceive myself as like resurrecting these traditions and lineages and wisdoms that the world needs. But yet there's so much control over just even that word, that title, midwife.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was saying earlier, how they steal a word and now they're like, this is part of our legal words. We've created a definition for it and what it means and how they steal it. So you,
Mhm.
again, yeah, being so intentional about our language is
Right.
is a whole thing in itself, and it's really
Yeah,
sad how they've hijacked all of it. Obviously, they've changed the whole language. Even I when I started walking this path, I started realizing like that is crazy that like Latin is a dead language. Like, how did an entire language die?
right.
It's because
Sanskrit.
they brought in a new language so that we would forget everything.
Even ancient Hebrew, like I have a lot of friends that are usually
Yeah.
from Israel that are living in the valley and stuff, and they speak about their language. There's like most scholars can't even read like the language as it used to be, like Hebrew as it is today is nowhere near what it used to be, centuries, millennials ago. So yeah,
It
and
really, like they took the land from the people, they took the language, they took their religion and or, their beliefs, however you want to say that. I swear it feels like they just sprinkled like drugs all over us where we
oh my
like
God.
forgot. We don't even know
Yeah.
who our ancestors are. We don't even know where we come from or
The truth of our
connect to the
history.
land. It's wild.
It is wild. And like what it like to finish the thought I was starting earlier, it's like what you're, bringing into my field through this conversation is very much so inspiration because it's like I was saying, like I like ran away for it. I'm like, like no, I don't consent. I need to leave. Like no, no, no. And ran out of fear, but like what you have done is like empowered yourself with education, right? And with information. And it's like, oh, I don't need, and I see that all the time, right? Throughout COVID, we had all of these people leave North America because they didn't want to be vaccinated. And, now Mexico is swimming with, people out of from America. And it's like, yeah, we're dispersing out of our country because out of fear. I see it all the time. People running away from Canada and the US because they're afraid to live there, because it's all imploding, because of the control, because of the government, and just these deep-rooted fear narratives. But it's like, wait, there is the possibility to stay and to like plant your feet in that soil, and say, no, I don't consent, and like I'm sovereign, and you actually don't have power over me.
Yeah. And imagine like a whole group of us all literally doing that.
Oh, I'm,
And
I'm imagining it. I'm imagining it.
that's the vision I hold like deeply for these future generations coming through. It's like this corporation is only held up by our belief in it.
Oh God.
And we realize that they've hijacked our beliefs to
They
create
hijacked our
their
minds.
reality. Like
Exactly.
again, even in the sphere of like COVID, they implanted so many things within us that we create the reality.
Yeah.
So when we start imagining this beautiful world with community and in sovereignty, that's actually what we create.
Yeah.
So, of course, though, they hijack that through the news and through all these different things so that we're perpetuating fear and then we're creating this world of fear.
Right.
So, we just like, we forget how powerful we are
Oh,
and
yeah.
that we truly create our reality. Our thoughts and our beliefs and our feelings create reality.
Right.
So,
And of
I guess
course,
I
the
feel like,
synchronicity, because we had that exact conversation with those exact points on the last episode. It's just like, yeah, yeah, just covered that. We create our reality mainly through belief, right? And like, yes, that's just so true. And the way that we respond to the world around us.
yeah. So these like babies though that we're bringing into the world where we're not like, to me, I would say like I'm not putting my kids into indoctrination school camps where they're learning this criteria. We're actually teaching them freedom and we're teaching them a wider belief of life, what that's going to change in the world. Like I said, these babies are bringing in this new era of freedom,
Right.
and they're communicating to their mothers and fathers that they need to come in a
Right.
very different way. So, but of course, birth in itself is sabotaged, right? They know that if they can sabotage birth, they can sabotage this connection between mother and baby and all these different things, all these different contracts that they can make a controllable
Population.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So, but I think that is the rebellion in itself is doing it in a loving way.
right.
And we're doing it all through love and with this like true belief in knowing who we actually really are. We're all coming back home to who we really are.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, do
Which
I
is
have any? Let
honestly,
me go. You share what you're going to share. I'm going to just quickly go over my list of questions and make sure I don't
yeah.
miss anything.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say that's really what like the whole like basis of my platform is Veda means ancient knowledge and revival is bringing it back. Like we're really going back to our roots, and I mean the roots of our ancient ancestors, the ones that lived truly connected with nature, truly connected to source, and truly knew who they were. And everything is that rather than outsourcing. It's this remembrance within all of us. It's just really all this is this is an awakening, a remembrance. So,
Yes. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you so much for like leading the way in this. Thank you for your work. Like for sure, I want to connect more privately and have, you support some things in our life, and just maybe help navigate with some things in our life. But yeah, it's
totally.
beautiful. And I just am really like I just really want to echo and reflect, with so much gratitude, just the place from within you that this is coming from, and like really to just see you embodied in that love and in that inspiration and like in the excitement and the joy of it all, of like, no, but I'm creating this world that I vision. Like your vision is not my vision and I don't consent. Like, no, and like this is
Hmm.
possible and I'm gonna share it, and I'm gonna, inspire others, and I'm gonna build that liberated, free, sovereign community, and I'm gonna allow for that to ripple out one person at a time. And I just think that, wow, it's like what are the benefits? It's like, yeah, there's some pretty big ones, right? And like the biggest one that I see at the root of it all is each individual, and you use the most powerful word, remembering their sovereignty, right? Because it was
Mm,
there. And then just learning to live in it.
yeah. And I will say too, I love everything you said, is that fear, I think, sometimes is part of the journey in recognizing where you are rooting your decisions in. Because it kind of comes with this, like when you start uncovering the truth of certain things, it's like, oh my gosh, and then the fears flood in and all of that stuff. And but having a conversation with all of these different fears and moving through them is really what busts you through it. So
Yeah,
that is, it's
the
part of the
medicine of fear,
journey.
right? No, it is. It is. And I mean, that's something that I do a lot in my, like, I do preparation sessions with a lot of clients, and not clients, like not people that I will be in their birth space, but I just support in birth preparation, specifically really highlighting the importance of that psychotherapeutic process as we approach birth, of like, okay, but let's look at the fears, let's look at the beliefs, like let's feel the emotions, let's not ignore any of it, let's bring it all to the table and give it all a seat at the table so that we can be in relationship to it and we can alchemize from that point,
Yes.
right?
Well, and you realize too, just like you're saying, you have these conversations with them at the table, and you realize most of these fears aren't actually rooted in truth.
And they're not even yours, they were told to you.
Yes. Yes. So when
And
you can start like really unpacking, like, why is this a belief I hold so deeply?
exactly,
Because the moment someone says, okay, don't get a birth certificate for your baby, how does your body feel?
exactly.
Like, does that sound a little scary? And now
Mhm.
let's unpack why.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, also, you highlighted many times, you said radical responsibility.
Mm.
And that in and of itself can be scary because we have
Oh,
been
yeah.
conditioned for generations to be reliant on this system, to fall back on it. And it
Mhm.
creates an illusion of safety for so many. And so even just that semantic in and of itself, like to reclaim radical responsibility, could be very intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of different ways, because then you start realizing there's your life is the way it is because of you. You're the responsible party for all of it, which to me was actually so freeing when
Right,
you start realizing, like, I actually create my reality. So what kind of reality do I want to create?
right,
And you mentioned something earlier. Like, honestly, I lived a lot of my life in fear. Uh, and I honestly didn't even want to have kids because I was like, why would anyone bring kids into this scary world?
right.
Like, it's so dark, it's so evil. Like, I would just never bring kids into this world. And when I got pregnant, that's when I had to shift my lens where I was like, I refuse to believe in doomsday.
Right.
So I'm going to create the kind of world that I want my children to grow up in. So that's really what I've, just like you said, that's really what I've done. And what's been most exciting for me, I feel like on this journey is connecting with all the mothers and fathers out there that held that same vision. And I'm seeing it in real time. Like we truly are creating it together.
Right.
And it's really the reality. I
Right.
really see that reality. So
Right. And so on the last episode, we were really unpacking that rhetoric specifically. We create our reality. And I'm curious to just share a little bit of the points that we were making, and to get your perspective, because we were, specifically highlighting. So I don't know if you know much about Emma, my our co-host in Birth the Middle Way, but she had a stillbirth
mm,
from an attempted free birth. and
Mm.
had been educating, really walking a really beautiful path and with all the intentionality in the world. And it's like, okay, like in her field, to really put that rhetoric, you created this reality, right? Like that. And so and so what I was sharing with her is like, I really feel like there's always going to be nuance things that just happen in life. And then that is, really our choice to respond. And the way in which we create the reality is from that point, from how we respond to all of these, your kid who's a sovereign being goes out into the world and, maybe gets in an accident or something. All mothers, I'm sure, carry that fear of like, okay, like you're not in my womb anymore. You're out in this world and anything could happen, And so do you kind of work with that nuance as well when speaking that we create our reality? Like, of course, the visioning and the behaviors and the choices and the responsibilities and the education. And then what about the nuance of just things that happen?
See, I don't believe things just happen. I
Okay.
don't. I feel like on some level we contracted,
Uh-huh.
whether it be a spiritual contract,
Hmm.
because most things, everything's spiritual actually before it is physical.
Right.
And even just, I want to say, on the concept, I want to say, even with babies, right? Coming into this world, we made a contract, or that wouldn't have happened, that a baby was created, and whether they came out live or not, that contract was, will you love me and be open to no long, that makes me want to cry
Oh
actually,
yeah,
but
yeah.
will you, will you love me even if I'm here for 14 weeks? If it's 42 weeks or 7 years
Right.
or 50. Like we did, it is a contract that we created that in something within that is always awoken in us, no matter the contracts
Right.
on any level to me. So that's kind of
That's so
where
beautiful. Yeah. And Emma did speak into that, I think, on the last episode as well, of like, would you, like still sign up to, be his mother, be Floyd's mother, even though it was, yeah, the 40-week journey and that was it in gestation, and yeah, I think that that's a beautiful perspective as well. And it's just, it's so nuanced. I feel like, for me, just looking through the lens of a psychotherapist and really like the process and the intention to meet people where they're at, right? And cause the least amount of harm. And so it's like with some of these spiritual rhetorics, it's like it can be harmful, like to just say that to a woman who just had a stillbirth, like, oh, well, you
Mhm.
created this reality and like you contracted to be that, and that could be ultimate truth, right? But it's like,
Yeah.
how do we approach these things with like delicacy and with awareness and with kindness and like with, yeah, the awareness of like where people are at and also like the nuance of like, yeah, we are all remembering and truth, like there is ultimate truth, but we're all getting there, and I think about my own self and my journey through myself of like, the time of the chapter of my life where I felt like it was ultimate truth to be vegan because that was going to cause harm to all of these animals and all of these different nuanced beliefs that went with that elicited that behavior. And then,
Mm.
moving through that to believe something completely different and focusing on eating, a high animal protein and fat diet now, and that coming from new information and new experiences and like that willingness to change and grow. And it's like I wouldn't have been open to the information then that I'm open to now, and just like, that the nuance of the human journey, the human experience, and just
It really is. And realizing too, though, that like in those moments of like the hardest things you experience is they're always the catalyst.
right,
Always. So even when they are the hardest things, and to not want to accept that on some level we accepted that,
right,
because that does also outsource that it just happened and someone else, something else had a hand, when really we accepted that catalyst because we knew that that was what was going to catapult us. And so did that other being that
right,
contracted with us.
right,
You were willing to be part of that, our catalyst,
right, right,
and actually see that as like a thank you,
right,
because the people that hurt me the most, I think, in my life, I've now been able to come back to it as a lens on like a thank you for what you've done for me, because I would not be anywhere near where I am without that
right,
catalyst. So it's like it really is, it's always the lens we choose to see it in.
right. Yeah,
Uh,
and I mean, it brings me, I just got to see the mother of my best friend who passed away when I was 19 while I've been home on this trip, and it's been years since I've seen her. And I shared with her about an ayahuasca ceremony that I had about 10 years after he had passed, and it was right when I had landed in the Sacred Valley. And the ceremony was just that. It was this deep, 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 like unshakable gratitude for his death because it was a catalyst for so much in my life that I could just see laid out in front of me. And it was like, how can I be anything but grateful for the catalyst of growth and expansion that you gave me through choosing
Oh,
your
that's so
path?
beautiful. I got goosebumps. Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's like to,
But
yeah.
also on the flip side, you could have lived your whole life in a victim
Uh-huh.
to that event that just so happened. But really, he chose in a contract with you to help you create that catalyst in
Right.
your life that
Right.
you couldn't have had otherwise.
Right. And it brings me back yet again, and we've plugged this on the podcast before. Are you familiar with the book The Little Soul in the Sun, the children's book?
Yes.
Oh
Oh, I
my
love
God.
that book. Oh,
Yeah, so
yes.
Emma and I have been talking about having a book reading on the podcast because this topic just comes up again and again, right? And just it speaks into those contracts of like, I am going to show up in your life, in the next life, in this role to give you the opportunity to learn, in the book it's forgiveness, but like anything, to learn the medicine of grief, to learn, whatever it might be, to learn the medicine of death, like the medicine of the continuation of consciousness is really what my friend gave me in his passing, because it led me down this spiritual pursuit of like, I can't lose you, to discover that I didn't lose you, right?
Mm-hmm. But you have to go so far away sometimes to like come back,
Mm.
and it's part of the journey too.
Right.
Because to skip the part of like the sadness and the grief and all of that, you can't skip over it
Exactly. You
either.
can't. Oh, wow.
And, even though you wish you could, you're
Right.
like, well, I know it's ultimately the best thing for me, but you have to be sad about it too. That's
Right.
part of like the freaking most complex human experience. And then also being human and feeling all these multiple feelings that are all opposite feelings at one time.
Right.
It's
Right.
wild.
So how would you, in the face of a mother that, let's say, has had specifically a stillbirth, who, Emma would totally be able to take that rhetoric, and she'll be listening to this episode for sure, and hopefully she can share with us, like her response as well to that. But like, let's say for a mom who is not anywhere in the realm of these beliefs or these thought processes, like if you were to come face to face with her, would you speak that like into her field of like, like, well, there was this spiritual contract with your baby, and they gave you this opportunity to grieve in this way so that you could learn in these other specific ways? Or would you avoid it? Like, to what level do you kind of embody these rhetorics and semantics just in
I think
walking through life?
I'm pretty good about feeling into the scenario and the situation because one scenario, depending on how she's coming at you, is that you just be a witness. First off, that would be the first role. And then if she wanted something more and was giving you cues, then you can
Yeah,
then you can share if she wants to know
your
your
perspective.
views, but otherwise I don't think it's our place to
Right.
share it unless they're asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just want to be a witness to her pain.
And so beautiful and wise, it's, yeah, thank you for answering the question and just being in the conversation, because it's like, yeah, we are all walking each other home, and we are all learning and growing together. And yeah, it's medicine for me in this moment. Like my partner yesterday said to me, he's like, your opinions aren't always needed, like you don't always have to insert your opinion. And I feel like I just like, there's a part of this my personality that's just like, I just want us to like get it. I want us to see these things. I want to share. I want to be in conversation constantly. Like, I want to trigger people in some ways and sometimes, because it's like I want to like push that edge, but it's like also like, yeah, I needed to hear that, So thank you for sharing that of just like, nah, but like when people are ready, they'll ask. And I know that that's true in the realm of therapy, right? Like I don't approach people in that way, but like for some reason, especially with like birth rhetoric and birth conversation, I feel like quite fired up about it often and like ready to just share. And it's not like I'm in conflict all the time with people, because I've developed communication skills that like, allow for me to do that in a kinder, more receivable way. But I definitely, don't have such a big filter to hold back all the time. And so it's like, yeah, just actually the wisdom and the medicine of like the witness and trusting in people's journey, trusting in their unfolding.
Yeah. And it's very, I wouldn't say I'm perfect at it either. Cause like you, when you mentioned, cause sometimes with my partner, I'm for sure like sometimes want to help him skip past the hard thing instead of
Right.
sit in the hard thing too. Yeah, I think
For
it's all
sure.
an art.
Oh my God. And like we can know the thing and we can even, like there's times where I'm sharing things with clients and I'm just like, oh yeah, I needed to hear that today.
Mhm,
Thank you,
mhm.
like channel for bringing that through. Because that's just it. It's like, and I've spoken into this on the podcast as well, but my teacher Wapio, she shares this semantic that has just changed my life this year, and the semantic it is not my privilege to know the destiny of another being,
Mm.
right? And to like really walk in a way that embodies that. Like, what does that look like? What does that mean? What does that mean for our, yeah, in our relationships with our partners? What does that mean in our mothering dynamics with our children? Like, to what extent do we, step in and interfere, and to what extent do we step back and witness and allow for their journey to unfold? And then, and that ripples out to every interaction that you have in life with, close friends to, the stranger that you meet on the street, and when to insert the art of it all, right? It's so deeply nuanced. It's so deeply paradoxical. It's something that we talk about a lot on these episodes, is just because like we all want to land in like it is this way, and everybody has their opinions and their belief, and there's so much nuance.
Yeah, and you think like you were saying earlier, how many times uh you said it for yourself, but how many times I've changed my mind
Right.
in my own belief a million different times and still being open to knowing that I think that's something I love about myself now is that I do love that I can change my mind
Me too.
with
Yeah.
presented with new information. So
I agree completely about myself. I feel that as well. And sometimes my partner will even be like, "You are just so ridiculous," like if one minute you're vegan, the next minute you're eating like mostly meat and you're just convicted in it all. And I'm like, yeah, but I celebrate that in myself.
yeah.
Like I think that that's like a healthy thing, is to be able to say like, I believe this thing and this is why. And then when you change your belief to be like, I believe in this thing now and this is why it shifted from that thing I believed in before,
Mhm.
Like I
Now it
feel
comes
like
with
that's,
experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
growth, and that's healthy, like the
Mhm.
opposite of that is dogmatism.
And life isn't black and white, and that's
Mm.
the thing. It's like it wouldn't it be so much easier if it was?
Oh
But
my
it's
God.
not, and we
It
get to
wouldn't.
experience it all, and that's the beauty of it.
Exactly. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. Do you have any like final closing thoughts, that anything that we missed, anything you want to share based on the conversation with the listeners?
Um, I guess the only thing I'd love to share is that you guys, where you can find me, because I'd love to connect
Please.
with you
Sorry, I
guys.
should have asked that. Yes,
No,
please,
you're
please,
good.
please.
I want to continue this conversation with
Yes.
you listeners that resonate with. So I'm most active on Instagram. My Instagram account is Veda, VEDA dot revival, REVIVAL. If you're not on Instagram, I have a website, vedarevival.com. But yeah, no, I'd love to
And
connect
we
with all.
will link all of that on the bottom of this podcast, and
Awesome.
anything else that you want to share. So I don't know if you have used Substack at all, but it does definitely allow for like more sharing on the bottom of a podcast. So any and everything that you want the listeners to have access to, maybe some resources, maybe some of your work, more description, please, share that, and we can really put that in the bottom of this episode for all the listeners to access.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. No, I'm just really excited. First of all, I'm glad we connected and I
Yes,
feel
thank
like
you
I
so
just
much.
now have a new like amazing friend that I'm
Yes,
excited
I feel the
for. And then
same.
I'm looking forward to creating new friends
Yes.
through this platform too. So
Thank you.
it'll
Oh,
be
so a question that I had, because also on Substack we do have the ability for listeners to ask questions. And so if
Mhm.
there's a question, do you feel open to me either sending it to you and for me to like help answer, for to send you the link for you to actually be able to be in dialogue with some people that might have questions around this conversation?
Sure. Yes, I'm happy to. I will say I don't know how active I
Right,
do
right, right, right.
best even just be active on the platforms
Of
that I
course, of course.
because I'm a mom always first and foremost,
Of
and
course, yes.
I'll do my very best. I'll say
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm very open to that. I just don't know how active I really can be.
Well, yeah, for sure. And we can be the ones checking that. It's not like we have the expectation for you to check the episode weekly or something. And so just if there's a direct question that like we couldn't answer for you, that we'll bring it to your attention.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm happy for emails too. Like, yeah,
Awesome. So
I'll
yeah,
say
share your email as well. That would be
yes
great. So people could
for
email
sure.
you as well directly.
Awesome.
Yay! Thank you so, so much, Veda. It has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. I feel super inspired myself. I'll definitely be reaching out with you to you with some personal things. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. And I'm sure that there are questions. I feel like we did cover things quite well, and I got answers to a lot of the questions that have been in my field. And so I hope that it was informative. And yeah, let's discuss it. Let's be in dialogue. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, have a beautiful day, everyone.